So lecture 7 of Brandon Sanderson's lecture series was all about Sanderson's 3 laws. Now, this was a lecture about magic systems, and he did talk about it in the context of magic systems, but also said, hey, these apply beyond magic systems. And so what we're going to do in this video is we're going to talk about the 3 laws, and then we're going to talk about the ways these expand beyond magic systems and how you can apply them to other parts of your writing. I loved this lecture. Literally, my only complaint so far is that the lectures aren't longer, because he answers so many questions that he didn't spend very much time on laws 2 and 3. Anyways, I'm like, oh, why isn't this 2 hours? Anyways, let's go right into it. So law number 1 is an author's ability to solve conflict in a satisfying way is directly proportional to how well the reader understands the magic. Very, very important law, I think. And he mentions that this is like a plot law generally. Totally agree with that. So the idea in the magic context is if the magic system can do X and the reader has no idea it can do X throughout the whole book, and then they solve the final conflict, especially towards the end, or a big conflict moment in the book with X, then it feels like deus ex machina. I always want to say deus ex machina. For some reason, it sounds cool. It kind of sounds like the name of a rock band, but it is deus ex machina, which Brandon helpfully tells us is Latin, even though it was in a Greek play context. Anyways, you could also rephrase this to say this is directly proportional to how well a reader understands the rules of your story, or how well, or really directly proportional to what the readers know overall. So let's think about different genres here. So let's start with a heist, because this one that seemed most similar to me. So even if it's not magical, the characters in a crew all have very specific abilities. This is why we're talking about a heist first. You know that this person is our safecracker, and this person is the gymnastics person, and this person is the hacker, and this person is really good at swapping things and pickpocketing and stuff. If we get to the end and we've seen a character, and a character needs to crack a safe, and we've never seen them crack a safe, and we have no idea that they can do this, and then they crack the safe in the climax, that feels like deus ex machina. The reader needs to understand the character's abilities and needs to see these critically play out before they are used to solve major problems. Or if they don't see them totally play out, at least hinted at. There could be something the whole time that you're like, oh, don't do that thing. Oh, don't do that thing. Oh, don't do that thing. And then in the climax, you find out what the thing is and they do the thing. I think that could also be satisfying and that could also pay off, but everything needs to be foreshadowed, right? You have to kind of build up to, so none of this is coming out of nowhere. Concepts here. So in examples, basilisk fangs in the Deathly Hallows for destroying Horcruxes. We had to get the basilisks, in book 2 to see that work. And then we had to realize that the venom had gone on the sword, and we had to know that. And then we had to destroy something with the sword. Do we destroy it with the sword? Yeah, we do. And then Ron and Hermione can go into the Chamber of Secrets and get a basilisk fang and stab the damn thing. Which one do they stab with the? Oh, it's the cup, I think, that they stab in the Chamber of Secrets. Anyways, we have to know and see that play out for that to be believable. Ultimately, arguably, that's a little bit of a plot hole in Deathly Hallows, but anyways. Another example is we see someone, this is getting into sci-fi fantasy, less skills here, but we see someone die from the poison berries in the Hunger Games, right? So this is not necessarily magical, this is again more sci-fi, but first, the girl who looks like a fox, she has a name like a fox, she eats these berries and dies. So not only does Katniss say, hey, these are poison berries, but we see it in action. And then when they take the poison berries out at the end, you know what happens. This is also why, so those were kind of hints at things. It's hinted that this works, or it's showing that something works, and then it pays off in the end. It's also part of why seeing a newbie training or struggling with a new skill and then seeing it off is so important. I don't know why I did this, and then all I wrote down were fantasy examples. What was I thinking when I wrote my notes? But I wrote the Patronus charm, where Harry works at it all year and then it pays off. Other bits of training like sword fighting, or even something as simple as like learning to be a better presenter, or like getting your courage up to then go into the negotiation and nail it, or gathering the evidence. And you see, we're about to talk about mysteries, but gathering the evidence together before going in to present to a court case. So we just need to basically, what the reader knows is so important to how satisfying things are. Another example is Hamish spending the entire fucking book of Sunrise on the Reaping trying to get through the bushes. He keeps trying to get through the bushes and he fails so many times. That goes back to the try-fail cycle. We can talk about mystery novels, crime novels, Agatha Christie, right? The reader has to be able to guess who the killer is, or it's not satisfying at all. So the reader has to know who all the suspects are. They have to have been introduced to the character who is the killer. And there has to be a way for them to guess who it is. So there has to be evidence against them for it to be satisfying. Again, what does the reader know? Brandon talks about red herrings and a general algorithm of like, make the character think of the obvious thing, so the obvious way to solve this problem, the obvious suspect, the obvious answer, and then kind of like rule it out. And then you put in a red herring. So the reader thinks they know who it was, or they think they know the answer to the question. And they kind of stop solving the mystery. And then at some point you shock them by revealing it couldn't possibly be that, and you do the big reveal of what it actually is. I liked that. I especially like the idea that like once the red herring is helpful, because once the reader thinks they know, they stop trying to figure it out. So then you can put clues in, but they're not trying to figure it out anymore. I liked that. Also, a very specific example. So this is going to have massive spoilers for The Husband's Secret by Leon Moriarty, sorry. There's a timestamp. Go to it to talk about the next rule. But this is an upmarket, maybe book club novel. And I've been thinking about this book so much in terms of like, what does the reader know that makes this ending satisfying? And it's very like subtle. It's not like, oh, like we know that the husband has a secret and things paid off. It's very much like, okay, The Husband's Secret, spoilers. This is an amazing book. If you haven't read it, skip. The Husband's Secret is he murdered the neighbor's daughter by choking her on the slide. Now, nobody knows about this, right? The wife finds out about the husband's secret, and the neighbor is trying to find her daughter's killer, and she thinks it's this other guy. And that at the end of the novel, the other guy is on the road, and the husband and the wife and their daughter are also on the same road, and the daughter is running towards the guy that the neighbor thinks killed her daughter, the living daughter. Anyways, the neighbor who has the murdered daughter, she accidentally, going after the guy she thinks killed her daughter, hits the husband's daughter with her car. Yes, she hits the protagonist's daughter with her car when the protagonist's daughter is running to this man. And it happens because the neighbor whose daughter was murdered is like gunning towards this man. The daughter loses her arm. And then at the hospital, the wife and husband come to the neighbor, and they realize that she was trying to basically kill this other guy because she thinks he murdered her daughter. And they say, it was me. I killed your daughter. And the neighbor is just like shocked. But because she feels so much guilt for injuring their daughter, she's like, enough. And like, she loves their daughter. She thinks their daughter, Polly, who's such a cute name, is so wonderful. And she just says enough. But here's the thing. The fact that there's like no revenge and he doesn't go to jail or whatever, you would think that wouldn't be satisfying. But it works because of one scene from the murdered daughter's point of view. There's a couple of scenes from her point of view, and then there's one where she's murdered. And in that scene, the order is wrong. She's scared. The husband, who's not a husband yet, he's a teenager, comes up to her, chokes her for a few seconds. Then the pressure on her neck loosens. And then something in her body feels very, very wrong. And as a reader, you're like, how does that work? How does that work? And so and it plants a seed, right? And you're like, that was how the murder works. That doesn't feel like how someone is murdered via choking if it loosens and she feels it loosening and then she dies. Like, that's odd. And so when the neighbor is like, okay, I'm not pressing charges, I'm just gonna leave it, it is more satisfying because you have doubt. And at the very end, there's this big juicy reveal that's so interesting. Honestly, the best part of the book is that epilogue. And you're like, oh my God. But it wouldn't have worked without that scene, without the reader having the knowledge of how this thing went down. So it's these little tiny breadcrumbs, this little tiny ordering thing that makes the whole ending super satisfying and interesting and like really impactful. Leon Moriarty is amazing at this. All right, now we're going on to 2. Sanderson's Law 2, which is that flaws and limitations are greater than powers. Obviously, he's talking about the magic systems, and this applies to character. So within magic systems, the limitations of the magic systems are more interesting than the powers it has. So you can play more with the flaws, with the limitations, whether it's using the magic makes them exhausted or using the magic, just use the example of like kills your grandma or something. That is super interesting because that requires the characters to then go in and problem solve and work around it and figure things out, and it makes things more predictable. In character-wise, a character who can do anything is uninteresting. Flaws are more interesting than strengths generally. And from a character perspective, I think this is where the contradiction element of character building really comes in. So when you're thinking about an interesting character, I'll often start with like a celebrity who is super shy, or a principal who doesn't know anything about teaching. That's not great. I don't like that given the current climate. A principal who, I don't know. Oh, like in The Husband's Secret, a principal who has no interest in talking to parents and just loves the children and loves the education and is like, you parents do whatever you want. An engineer who, I don't know, like just thinking of these contradictions, you can, with those flaws and limitations, you can add those in, lean into contradiction, and also use them to counter reader expectation. When I'm building my characters, I like to look at the character's personality, their misbelief, their want, their need, and come up with a contradiction, which is basically having their flaws and limitations impact their strengths and limit them from being able to fully express their strengths or gifts or whatever. So an example, I have a stage manager, and she is like she is like wants to stage manage. She's a teenager, and this is like her favorite thing in the world. And she believes that if she lets people in, though, if she's like one of the group, if she's one of the cast, she won't be in a position to stage manage anymore because no one will want to listen to her. Her power comes from kind of being other. And it's through stage managing that she has her most intimate and relationships, and she's able to build the most friendships and stuff. So the contradiction is stage managing gives her her most deep connections, yet she can't connect with them deeply because of this misbelief. And yeah, that's really where my mind went with the flaws and limitations one, because that makes it a lot more interesting than, wow, she's a great stage manager, oh my God, you know? All right, Sanderson's Law number 3 is expand what you already have before you add something new. This was saying, like, if you have a religion, don't add another religion until you've like gone into the depths. It's more interesting to have a break off of the same religion than it is to have a whole different religion, most of the time. He also says something in the lecture about like more villains doesn't mean a more compelling story, a more compelling plot. More magic systems doesn't equal a more complex, more interesting world. And this can go to all elements of a story. So if you have one information plot or one relationship plot, can you deepen it? Have you explored the depths of the idea before you add another element? I have a book, and I'm very proud of it. I think it's great. But I do have an information mystery type plot thing going alongside a heist, and part of me wonders, they're all connected in, but part of me is sometimes like, if I'd added one more thing to this, it would have been too much. Like one more element would have taken us way, way out, right? Like if you have or when I was coming up with the plot for my Nutcracker book, originally I was like, there's going to be there was going to be 2 competitions, because I didn't want one of the main characters, I was like, he's not going to be in it. So there's going to be a Nutcracker competition, and at the same time it's this whole holiday event, and there's like this community service fundraising competition going on at the same time. And then I was like, wait, what? Why? And I was like, nope, everybody's in the Nutcracker. That's all it is. It's just the one competition. We have to dig deeper and find more conflict here. Or for a while, it was going to be a nutcracker competition where it was between this school and a rival school that they didn't know. And I was like, no, I can't bring in a rival school. I need to work with the people I already know in my school, in my building, and have it be a competition within the building. So we're digging again deeper into that one conflict within the school. Another thing that comes to mind is This Lullaby by Sarah Dessen, where there are numerous relationships, numerous couples, but they're all around the same theme: is love worth the risk? So none of the couples explore anything else really other than that kind of one question: is love worth the risk? Can love last? Can you change yourself for love? Like those little complicated, like the theme thing. None of them go and address anything else. None of them go beyond this question, this seed of an idea. Other things about this one. Can you, the villain that you have, going to that question, if you have one villain, if you have one conflict, can you complicate it more? Can you complicate the power dynamics? Can you complicate the relationship? I once read that there are 2 ways to have a surprise or a revelation with the villain at the end of a story. It's 1, reveal an unknown opponent, so John Truby's fake ally opponent, or 2, reveal a connection between the opponents or between the character and the opponents. So it's not, the first one is revealing an unknown opponent, so this person wasn't the villain, but they are. Or you can go in and you can dig deeper and say, okay, there's not a new opponent. We already know the character, but there's not a new opponent. There's just a different connection between the opponents, or a different connection between the character and the opponents. Luke, I am your father. You can also expand this to POV and to timelines in your book, and thinking, am I really going to get to explore the depths of the POVs that I have before I add a new one? Am I exploring the conflict in this timeline to its full potential? Is it possible that adding another POV or adding another timeline could weaken your story? Again, just talking about my holiday rom-com, the Nutcracker one again. It was originally 6 POVs. Loved the 6th one. It was so cute, and it was hockey, and it was crushy, and it was so heartwarming. But that POV character was missing an element that all the other characters had in common. And having her in there, having that one additional POV, was actually limiting my ability to explore this element more deeply. So I could have added another element to her to try to tie her back, or added an element to everybody that tied everybody together. But instead, I just said sayonara, baby, and I got rid of the POV. I was like, maybe someday you can be a novella. And there we go. So that was Brandon Sanderson's Lecture 7. Tell me what you thought. Tell me how you would apply Brandon Sanderson's 3 laws to fantasy, or to outside of that kind of magic system, world building area. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this, give it a big thumbs up, comment down below what you thought, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.